So I'm a firm believer that everybody can take care of plants and everybody can make their plants thrive. It just kind of depends on like getting the right plant and doing the right things for it, obviously. But I really don't think that there's anybody that can't keep a plant alive. There's obviously so many things you can do to help your chances at keeping the plant alive, but there's just a list of things that I think that everybody should be doing in order to have their plants be the happiest they can be. The first one is making sure the humidity around your plants is at a good level. Plants need a lot of humidity because oftentimes the plants that we all have in our homes are tropical plants, like they're native to tropical climates. And it's gonna be really humid in tropical climates. So when you bring them into a house that's maybe really dry or just not as humid as they like, they don't thrive as much as they could. So I recommend just getting a really small or just medium-sized humidifier off of Amazon or anything like that, and that will literally do the trick for you. You don't need to get anything fancy at all, just a little humidifier. And heck, I even had one of those little oil diffusers and just put water in it, so it was just like diffusing some water, so it was a little mini humidifier. I had that when I first got into plants because I had one calathea and I literally just had it right next to the calathea all day. But the humidity in my home is usually about 60 to 70%. And even that, I know some people don't like as much, and you'll see there's a lot of these IKEA greenhouses popping up and they always have their humidity super high in those cabinets, and those are the plants that are doing really well. So yeah, just having it at a little bit of humidity, and obviously you don't want to go overboard and make your entire house a sauna or anything like that, because you do still need airflow, otherwise there's going to be like some mold problems and all that sort of stuff. So you need high humidity, but you also need that airflow with it. Another thing you need, and this isn't necessarily actively taking care of your plants, but I always have a bit of extra like watering trays sitting around, because that just helps me with my watering process. So regardless if you water from the top or whether you're a bottom waterer, I recommend having some watering trays so you can either water your plants if you water from the bottom, or if you water from the top, let them drain out for a bit, because you don't want to just have them draining onto your floor, and you don't want to like stuff that up so then the water just sits down there. So what I mean by watering trays is just a couple of like these little things, and I have the really deep ones since I bottom water because I like to fill them up quite high and then just like rotate plants in and out. But these are super helpful because I can have a bunch of plants on the same countertop all getting watered, and I don't have to just rely on like one or two of these, and then I can just rotate them in and out, and it just saves so much time and effort. And I know with a lot of people taking care of plants, it is a time commitment that they can't really make. So this just saves you a lot of time and also saves your floors if you're letting your plants drip onto your floors. For instance, I have these hanging baskets back here, and the green heartleaf philodendron in particular, I mean, there's no tray at the bottom, and it's just in the regular nursery pot. So when I water it, like water drips out of the bottom. So instead of just hanging it straight back up, or if I do hang it straight back up, I just put a tray underneath, but I usually just have an empty tray and then lay this in there and let all the water drain out. And then, you know, empty it periodically if I notice that there's too much water draining out of it and that it's sitting in that water. But honestly, like watering trays were a bit of a game changer for me, because I used to kind of just hunt around for pots and not really know what to do with a plant that I just had in its nursery pot until I got one of those like cover cash pots, whatever. And I have a bunch of plants now that are just kind of sitting in watering trays, and those are like their pots. Like I don't have any cover pots for them. For instance, this Scindapsus is still in its plastic nursery pot it was in when I first bought it, and I've just put it in a watering tray down here, and it just kind of sits in there. And when I water it, I just take one of my bigger trays out, water it, put it back in its tray, and just let it be. And it honestly cuts the watering time down in half. So it just saves you a lot of time, really. It doesn't necessarily improve like, you know, the life of the plant or anything like that, but it just gives you more time to spend on your other plants and maybe like tend to a bit more plants than you could if you spent a lot more time watering them and just waiting for them to drain. I don't know, it makes it a lot easier. Another thing I recommend, and this is just kind of to keep you a bit more organized, is keeping some sort of journal, whether that's on your phone or a physical like pen and paper journal, about your plants and how they're doing, because a lot of times time just gets away from us and we don't know when we last watered, we don't know when our last pest treatment was. And yeah, it's a good way to track the progress of your plants and just make sure that you're getting the care to them that they need. And it's also just a good way to keep tabs on like, oh, I've come so far since this time last year. I'm doing so much more for my plants. I'm taking so much better care of them and all that sort of stuff. And especially if like your plants had gotten pests or something like that, when you make note of it and you can see how long that's been a problem, it maybe makes it a bit easier for you to like diagnose and attack the problem that's at hand. On top of journaling, I also recommend taking pictures quite frequently of your plants, more as like a growth tracker. And these kind of go hand in hand with the journaling, because I know that there are quite a few journals out there on the market that you can like put pictures in of your plants so you can actively track the growth and just how they're doing in general as well. But I have so many plants in my collection that I didn't even realize were growing until I looked back on some pictures from a couple months ago and then realized that my plant has actually taken off since that time. And I'm quite bad with timelines, so if something happened a week ago, it seems like maybe 2 weeks, it seems like a couple days ago. I just can never really tell. So having pictures with dates on them, or just a journal with dates on them and that sort of thing, makes it a lot easier for me to be like, oh, okay, this grew this much since last week, or this much in a month, and that sort of stuff. And it makes it a lot easier to kind of gauge how often I water, because if someone asks me, okay, so how often do you do this? I'm just like, I have no idea, because I don't keep track of it. Another thing you need to do for your plants, if you want to, obviously this one's a personal preference, but it does just kind of benefit the plant overall, is rotate your plant. A lot of us have our plants in positions where only one side faces the sun, and that's a bit of a problem because then the plant just grows all in that direction. Especially if you have like a tree or something like that, it's all gonna start leaning to that side, trying to reach that sun. So you do really need to rotate them quite often. I think about every day, if you just rotate it around, so the next day it gets the other side, like that's the minimum you should be rotating your plants. Especially if your plants are like in the like baby stages, they need to be rotated very badly, otherwise they're going to grow in that direction and just be stuck in that direction, because once they're like established plants, they don't move as much as they used to when they were just like seedlings. Obviously, if you have like a hanging pot on a bookshelf and that sort of stuff, it's quite hard to rotate it because you don't want to just stick all the vines inside the bookshelf and not have those get any light. So those ones I usually just give a pass to and let those just be a little top heavy on the one side. And the last thing, and I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is repotting too soon. And I don't mean, you know, you come home and you repot it straight away, because plants obviously get a bit of a shock from that, but they can handle a lot more shock than you think. Although don't go out of your way and do it on purpose. But for repotting, a lot of people repot as soon as like the foliage grows over the pot and gets really big, or as soon as they notice like one little root coming out of the bottom of the pot, or just something like that. And plants can stay in their pots a lot longer than you think. And I mean, this is so evident with so many people posting their pictures of like massive compacted roots and all that sort of stuff, and the plant's still largely healthy. Like, plants can be a lot more root bound than you think. Obviously, they'll start showing you signs of when they do want to be repotted, like maybe some of the old growth is dying off a bit quicker, or maybe the growth is stunted and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, a lot of times when you repot, you probably could have waited a bit longer. And this just kind of saves your plant the trouble of trying to like adjust to the new environment and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of times people do it so early that the roots just get overwhelmed by the amount of soil and moisture that's in there after you water, and then that combined with the potential overwatering that could happen, it's not good for anybody. So I always wait to the very last possible moment to repot my plants, and some of them might need to be repotted, but I kind of just keep them there because they're still growing fine and it's still just working out for me. Like, I have a Scindapsus that has roots coming out at the bottom, and I just leave it because it's been happy overall and it's still growing really fast and putting out some big new leaves. So I hope you can use these tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff to make your plants thrive and to pretend you have a green thumb for a bit, because not all of us have a green thumb, even if we can keep all these plants alive. But I really do think you guys can keep all these plants alive, and I hope that it works out for you guys. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.